A good horror game is something special. It is not able just to challenge us with its gameplay or tell a good story, but to scare us, to haunt our dreams and idle thoughts, even to make us question our own perceptions of reality. In this podcast, we meet the developers of both existing popular horror titles and hotly anticipated upcoming games to discuss how they do it, what inspires them, and all things spooky and unnerving. Welcome to Talking Terror, the official podcast of the Horror Game Awards.
What is up, everybody? Andy here for Talking Terror, the official podcast of the Horror Game Awards. Joined by my esteemed colleague, Will. We've got a very special guest in the house today. We have Mariel, the creative lead for the upcoming Clock Tower. Is it would you call it a remaster?
I think so. Yeah, remaster. Yeah.
Yeah, the upcoming Clock Tower remaster. I mean, I don't know about you, Will. This news, and being in the circles that we are, obviously Biohazard classified, Resident Evil Central, this absolutely came out of nowhere. We was watching the LGR3 show, and it was like, whoa, Clock Tower. What on earth is going on? It really does feel like we've had a bit of a resurgence with Silent Hill, Resident Evil, etc., Dead Space, Alone in the Dark, of course, and now it appears that it is Clock Tower's time to shine. So, Mariel, give us the lowdown. Why Clock Tower?
Yeah, so I think something that WayForward and Limited Run have been really interested in doing over the past few years is kind of finding these hidden gem games that haven't seen a Western release. So I think Clock Tower fits exactly that criteria, where Clock Tower is a game that has a really great, like, dedicated fan base. We did see the sequels released in the West, so there is some Western recognition. But the original Super Nintendo game, which is my favorite, never got a Western release or an official translation. So it seemed like the perfect game to kind of reintroduce to people, kind of bring back this brand, and just share with the world like how great this game is.
Yeah, it's as you said, it's quite unique because Clock Tower 2 and 3 were in the West, but like
Yes.
1 was only really in Japan. So how do you think that it's generated this kind of cult like following? What is it about Clock Tower 1 that is so iconic?
For me at least, so I discovered the game when I was 16. I had downloaded just like a giant zip of ROMs, and Clock Tower was one of them. And I played it just not knowing what it was. And at the time, it was like the scariest game I'd ever played. And I think that's something that's so special about it, that despite its age now, at least, I think people find it scary. I think they find it compelling. The characters, there's not a ton of characters, but they are each so interesting. It's just a game that I think has really, lasted the test of time.
Yeah, I suppose the art style lends itself perfectly. It wasn't like an early 3D game. I mean,
Right.
even if you, as much as, I've based my entire platform of Resident Evil, like you look back at the classic Resident Evil, it's like, oh, wow. Like I would say that Clock Tower, because of its art style, has aged. And actually, that's something that I've really wanted to focus on with this conversation about the remaster. This isn't just a port, and I think you've made that extremely clear in your press release. Can you go into some of the details on what this remaster is gonna have? Because there's a lot of stuff that's kind of built from the ground up here. So yeah, far away.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess one thing I can share is we are officially calling it Clock Tower Rewind. So that will be the name of this kind of like Port Plus version of the game. And so we will have kind of the base original game as it was, and then we will also have kind of an enhanced version that has some kind of like quality of life little changes. So players will have both options to play, the original as it was released, and then kind of like a little bit updated. It's not going to be terribly different, but again, like focusing on quality of life for kind of modern standards. We will have a animated intro, which I'm directing. And we will have additional credits at the end. We're going to do a motion comic that's based off of there was a color illustrated comic that was released, I think, in the strategy guide for the original game. So we're going to kind of bring that to life. And some extra features that kind of come with these Port Plus games, like we'll have some fun border artwork around the edges to kind of get that 4:3 screen to a 16:9. And we'll also have a physical edition, which we're kind of figuring out the bonuses for that, but which should be really, really cool. I think Limited Run is known for their great physical versions. So
Mm. Yeah, again, this came out of nowhere for us, certainly as horror content creators. It says here about the multiple endings and randomized gameplay elements, maximizing replayability. Can you go into a little bit of detail on that?
yeah, I mean, that is based off of the core game. The core game does have a bunch of endings that are completely like wildly different. You can get one of the endings just within like 10 minutes of playing. So we're maintaining all of that.
Cool.
And I think that really is referring to just how the game works, kind of playing through the game, the experience is a little different every time. There's kind of like one of two key items that you can get that impacts the ending. That's I believe randomly generated. So again, this game on its own, the way it was made, is a game that can be replayed over and over. So I think that being able to highlight that and say like this isn't a game that's just so retro you're going to play it once and forget about it. Like you can come back to this game multiple times and have a different experience.
I suppose, obviously, it didn't make it out of Japan originally. It did obviously get a port on the PlayStation, but what lengths are you going to kind of translate it and localize it for the West?
Yeah, so we have done a completely new translation. I know there are like several fan translations, and I think we were kind of digging into like, oh, what were some of the reasons maybe these translations made this choice in wording. So we were kind of like aware of what else was out there, but this is a completely new translation that was done in house by WayForward. So I think we're hoping to kind of bring the most I guess accurate, translation out there that will hopefully be the one that's like the one,
Yeah.
because there's always been a few takes on it.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the Carbon engine?
Yeah, so Carbon Engine, it's not exactly my wheelhouse, but that is Limited Run's in-house engine, I believe, that is being used to kind of port this game over and then get it on, modern systems. So I think, they're going to be the ones that's best to speak to exactly how it works. But I believe, it is in-house, and they have their own infrastructure to make this happen.
How many have you got a kind of a rough indication of kind of how many games have already been on the Carbon engine?
Oh, I actually have no idea. I would love to know
Or maybe some
also.
or maybe some kind of highlight titles that have been on it that other people may know that are tuning into this for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, I believe the last game that WayForward and Limited Run did together, River City Girls Zero, I think, was done with the Carbon engine.
Hmm.
So I think in that vein, that was another game where I forget it was a Kunio-kun title, but it was another game that hadn't seen a Western release, so they took the opportunity to release it in the West, and I think that was done with the Carbon engine.
What are your aspirations for Clock Tower? What are you hoping once this is all said and done? Are you hoping for a bit of a revival in that type of storytelling?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've loved this game for so long. I would just at on the very base level, I just want to see more people know and love this game, the way that I do. So just getting kind of the attention and exposure it deserves is really my goal, I guess. I'm just like, I want you to love this as much as I do. But yeah, if it does lead to kind of like a revival of the IP, if we get to see more Clock Tower games or other media, like that would be amazing as well.
Yeah, I almost feel like, again, in the circles that we're in, everyone knows what Clock Tower is, but
Hmm.
Yeah.
no, because of the accessibility of Clock Tower,
Yeah.
nobody's actually nobody's actually played it. So I suppose with this, it's going to be fantastic that it is going to be so accessible to everyone now.
Yeah, yeah, and I really think one thing I actually didn't mention with one of the new things that we're bringing to the game is that we do have an original song by Dale North and Mary Elizabeth McGlynn, which you might recognize from Silent Hill fame.
Yep.
So
Oh,
I
yes,
think,
yeah.
yeah, like getting a little bit of that crossover. I think there are a lot of horror fans that might have some awareness of it, but haven't experienced it themselves. They might have heard Silent Hill's amazing music. So I think getting a little bit of that crossover to kind of bring Clock Tower the attention it deserves, I think is really exciting.
Yeah, no, because I was going to ask, like, obviously you're working with an incredible, rich IP and working with some
Yeah.
incredibly talented people. What's it been like for yourself working on this project?
I mean, it's my dream project. It really is. I think just being able to, but it also makes me nervous, because it's
I
like
can imagine.
it's a high bar, right?
Yes, definitely. And you've got
Yeah.
the purists
So
out there who'll be like, "Oh, you're meddling with it," but as you
right,
said, that
right.
obviously you're offering the both hand with the original version and the new
Yes.
remastered version. So
Yeah, I think that's really what we're trying to do, where it's like we want to bring the original version, like the best version of the original, to a new audience. But also, there are areas in which we can kind of put our own little spin on things, bring a new perspective, like with this animated intro and the new music. So that is there for the people that will enjoy it. Totally understand if you're just like an original purist, that does
yes,
exist
yeah,
for you as well.
yeah, no, definitely.
Obviously, we did speak off air and said about kind of the programming side of it, but this has been a formula that has been done previously, where you kind of have like an original version and a remastered version at the same on the same port, certainly. Is it going to be like a simultaneous thing, like Master Chief Collection, where it's like on the fly, or is it going to be you're going to launch this mode, this is classic mode, and then
Yeah,
launch this mode, this is remastered?
I believe it's the latter, where you're going to start the game in one mode or the other. Um, Pretty sure. Like, maybe don't quote me on that, but I believe that's what it is.
Get the headlines ready,
Get
Will.
it done. I'm sending it now.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
It's obviously it's becoming a bit of it's kind of a coverall basis thing. So that again, that is the true beauty of it. On top of this coming out of nowhere, the true beauty of it is you are still preserving the original,
Right.
but also obviously doing your own little spin on it.
Yeah.
Have you got an idea of what the actual physical release is going to have? Is there going to be like little extras that's going to be with it and
Yeah,
whatnot?
I mean, it will have extras. We're still kind of figuring out what exactly those will look like. But I think if you look at Limited Run's previous like physical releases, they do these really fantastic big box sets. So it will definitely be in line with the other releases that Limited Run has done.
No, excellent. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
absolutely can't wait for it.
Yeah, me too, honestly. Like getting a little bit of like Clock Tower merch, like
Yeah.
I'm very excited.
Yeah.
So obviously you're a massive fan of Clock Tower, and it's a bit of a dream project. What are your kind of favorite memories of Clock Tower, and what are you hoping that people experience for the first time and you're like, whoa,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I mean, when I played it, for the first time, I honestly I couldn't play it for more than a few minutes at a time because I got so scared.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I'd experienced something like that, where it's like I had to like save state and like quit. Like I really just couldn't handle it. So I think, from such a retro game, that I could have like experience that kind of like heightened emotion, that kind of heightened tension from a game like it. I'm still like I'm still searching for that. Like it
Definitely.
really holds a special place in my heart for being able to evoke that kind of emotion for me, for being on its face a relatively simple game, but it has so much complexity, that I just love.
Yeah.
And what's the team like at WayForward and Limited Run? What's been the general kind of morale around this project? Are there fans like yourself that run the project, or maybe people that experiencing this IP for the first time, and they're like, this is actually kind of different to what I would normally do.
Yeah, no, I think we have a mix of both for sure, where we have another person on the team who's a super fan who's like, there's been times where he's corrected me on like a little bit of information I might have had wrong. So it's great to have someone else out there who just gets it and loves the game as much as I do. And then we have other members of the team who, weren't super familiar with it from the start, but just see how great it is. So I think the entire team is super passionate about it, regardless of whether they were familiar with it or not prior to the project. So it's been a really really great environment to kind of like brainstorm and work on stuff together and try to make this the best version it can be.
No, definitely. Because I was going to ask, have you been in contact with like the original people who developed the game at all, or?
We have, yeah. So we
Really?
are in touch with Kono-san, who's the original director of the game. I can't go too much into detail,
No, of course not.
but yeah, I think I'm allowed to say that we are having him involved.
No, I can't even imagine how much of a fangirl I would be in that moment. So.
Yeah, no, I think one thing that's been really wonderful is he has been vocal about the game in recent years. I think he's done an interview about Clock Tower within the past couple of years. So being able to share with him that this is happening and ask for his involvement and blessing, has been really really great.
Yeah, no, it's always good. I suppose that's a little kind of little bonus to this specific project, because you do have a lot of remasters that don't have the kind of OG crew involved. So even from that element, it's special. It's not
Yeah,
just, and again, because it is limited run, and they always treat everything respectfully. It's not just like a let's throw it out there
Exactly.
and see how it does. There's
right.
more care, attention to detail, and it sounds like kind of fans on board who
Yeah.
want to see this be successful.
Right. Yeah. I think we really want to do right by the fans. And I think as fans ourselves, I think I hope we have an idea of the right way to go about it. But definitely it is about bringing this project to, as big of an audience as we can, and not, just plucking an IP out of nowhere and be like, we can take this and change it into something modern. It's like, it's really not about that at all. It's about bringing the original to a wider audience.
Can you, and again, I appreciate this may be outside of the scope of your role, but have you got an indication of when this, like going back to the beginning, like when this was even conceptualized of bringing, was it quite a quick turnaround? Was it, oh, actually, this is a 5-year plan and, we're finally hitting the ground running?
Yeah, honestly, I don't know how detailed I can get into it, and I don't even know. I'm sure there's tons of details I'm not even aware of. But it was definitely not like a straightforward like go to the publisher, now the game's signed, do whatever we want. It was not a process like that. I believe there was some investigation around like who even owned the IP, when this first came up. So I think there was a lot of back and forth in that way. And then once we got a hold of the right people, of course, business contracts and all that take a while. So I think this has been brewing for a little while. It definitely wasn't just a one and done kind of deal.
Yeah.
Do you think there was not necessarily to talk about other games, but do you think there was like a moment where it was like a time in recent history where something happened? Like, for example, I'll give an example here. Resident Evil 2 remake come out. Then all of a sudden, and I'm not saying it might be a coincidence, we got a Dead Space remake. Alan Wake 2 plays extremely similar to Resident Evil 2. We're almost getting, and I'm not saying that they are carbon copies of each other, but almost a trend was set, and it was like, actually, now it is viable to try something like Clock Tower. Do you think there was a period in time where there was kind of a renewed interest in horror, and that's the reason?
I mean, I don't know if there was like a specific catalyst, but I do think we've seen much more openness to a game like this. You know, I think obviously we've kind of been in this you know, like indie, I don't know what to call it, just like an appreciation for indie games for the past maybe 10, 15 years, maybe 20 years even. And I think, you know, I think we've just become more and more accepting of like, what does it look like to make a horror game in this retro style? Oh, there's actually retro horror games that exist already.
Yeah.
You know, so I think now is the right time to bring a game like this to an audience that I think is ready to accept it, when maybe that might not have been the case, you know, when we were at peak, like PS2, PS3, high fidelity as possible. You know, I think we're much more open to exploring different types of games and different types of styles.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that. I mean,
Yeah.
the kind of basis for the Horror Game Awards was that the appreciation of independent horror games.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
you know, a title like this, if it was a brand new title, would slot straight in. So there is no reason why a resurgence or a remaster of a classic certainly can't be at the Horror Game Awards.
Yeah, absolutely.
I suppose my next question is, and you have made it kind of apparent it's still a work in progress, but have you got an idea of intention of when this is going to be in everybody's capables?
Yeah, I think we're aiming for the first half of next year. I think we're not getting any more specific than that at the moment, but I believe, yeah, I believe that's what it would be.
Fairly realistic. Fairly happy with that. Because it's to be fair, you have been. It's pretty vague on the press release. It's like early 2024. Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair enough. So, I mean, how long has it been in active development from your point of view?
Yeah, I mean, we started, I guess, during the summer. So I think we, you know, it's been kind of brewing for a long time, but I think we were able to start in earnest during the summer. So yeah, it's been several months of kind of working on the ROM. We did the new translation. I've been working on the intro, and you know, just kind of getting it to a place where we have all these like new features kind of built out, and then porting it and you know doing all the release stuff. So yeah, I think probably all in, we're looking at maybe under a year-ish of development time.
Oh, crikey. That's quite quick.
It is.
I was just and again, I think people need to appreciate that reverse engineering a title of this age is extremely complex. No one's written the book on how to do it. It's a lot of learning for the first time, but it seems like with this carbon engine, you know, WayForward and Limited Run have kind of found the key to crack the code, really. So
yeah, I don't know how they do it, but they make it work.
no, it's amazing, and hopefully this does set a trend for other titles to also make a resurgence, or even, you know, down the line they look at another installment of Clock Tower on this on this kind of independent level basis. That would I would definitely be on board for that. But obviously, this is the Horror Game Awards, and we would be remiss not to talk to you about horror games. So, Mariel, what have you been playing?
Okay, so I have to confess, I've been so busy this year. I have not made time for much at all, but I will always make time for Resident Evil.
Oh,
I adore Resident Evil. So I was actually in the UK for a few months, and I just got back. So I didn't have access to any consoles. So I'm finally getting to play the Ada DLC. So I'm in the middle of that. But yeah, Resident Evil is one of my all-time favorites. I will always play the new Resident Evil when it comes out. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're in good company, 100%.
I know.
Yeah.
What was your thoughts on Resident Evil 4 now you've kind of gone through it?
Yeah, I mean, I loved it. I thought it was such a good way to kind of, um, like the original one was so revolutionary, right?
Yeah.
Just for how it kind of really flipped that formula on its head. It had really great controls. It felt so dynamic, and I think this new one did that again somehow. It
Weird,
has
yeah.
kind of the it has the same story and the characters and the scenario that we all love, but it felt so good to play. I think they really just did the original justice in every way possible. So yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, I mean, outlets across the board as well, like 10 out of 10, 10 out of
Oh
10.
yeah.
I couldn't believe it. Like I thought, they'll probably get like an 8 or a 9, but when big critics were coming, like all reviewers were like just raving about Resident Evil 4. And again, it really proves that, kind of going back to Clock Tower, a game can have a reset. I know it's a slightly different, nuanced game, but
Hmm.
it can have a kind of second wind resurgence.
Yeah.
It's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I really love to see everything they did with it because I loved the Resident Evil 2 and 3 remakes, but they made me realize like, oh, the original games are kind of short. Like I think I beat RE3 in like one sitting basically.
Yeah.
So I think seeing it, being able to play RE4 and just be like, oh yeah, there was so much that went into this game and it's just so fun. Yeah, I had a great time, and the Ada DLC has been fantastic so far as well.
And I think Ada DLC was like $10, and when that came out, I was like, that's not going to be too long. But actually, it's like 8 hours long.
It is, yeah.
That's
I
like-
haven't beaten it yet.
it's longer than the RE2 and 3. It's actually unbelievable.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, tons of effort has obviously gone into that project. But yeah, so Resident Evil 4 was your kind of main highlight this year.
I think so. Yeah. Apart from that, I play Final Fantasy 14 sometimes, but God, yeah, this year I kind of set like a personal goal to expand what I do, to work on new projects with new people, Clock Tower being one of them.
Hmm.
So I think actually playing the games that are supposed to be inspiring me has kind of fallen to the wayside, unfortunately.
Yeah, no,
It's
I
hard.
100% attest to that.
I'll agree.
It's just
Yeah.
never enough time in the day.
Yeah.
I suppose what are you looking forward to in the future, obviously outside of Clock Tower?
Oh God, I've been so out of the loop. I feel like when something new comes out, I'm like taken by surprise,
Hmm.
So nothing so like specific comes to mind. I know there's like new Silent Hill in the works. So I'm excited to see how that turns out. But yeah, nothing too specific. I've just been so heads down on work.
Hmm.
I
I
need
suppose
someone
what
to
we
give me
could
the
do-
lowdown.
I
Yeah.
suppose what we could do is just throw a couple of names at you and just go, wow, yeah, that was kind of come out of nowhere. Let's say
Yeah.
Dead Space remake, when that came out, what was your thoughts
Oh
about when
yeah.
that came out?
So I only played a tiny bit of the original. I never got through the whole thing. I actually found that pretty terrifying. Maybe that was my second to Clock Tower, like, up there for fear factor.
Hmm.
So yeah, I would absolutely check out the new Dead Space.
I suppose we would be remiss not to talk about, we're talking about old school horror games making a resurgence. Alone in the Dark dropping in January.
Oh yeah.
Thoughts about that? Because I think it, and Will might have to correct me here, but it is a reboot of the first Alone in the Dark, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So
There's
Yeah,
big inspiration
so-
from that story. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So Alone in the Dark is a series I've tried a little bit of, but I've never dug in too deep, so I'm not super familiar with it. So it sounds like this would be the perfect chance to really be able to familiarize myself with it. That sounds great.
and again, it's the horror resurgence.
Yeah, for
bringing
sure.
bringing these iconic old school games back to life, really.
Yeah,
No,
absolutely.
exactly. Maybe you could potentially work on the original from the PC and bring that one back.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, because I was going to ask it, what would be like another dream project of yours? Because I know Clock Tower has a long history with you, but what other games would you love the opportunity to if you had the chance?
Oh man. That's a tough one because it's funny, like, Clock Tower was really up there. It's just
Hmm.
like I'm obsessed with this game.
Yeah.
What else? I know there's titles out there. I played so I grew up on the Genesis, and then I had a Sega CD. I was one of the
Hmm.
few. Then I had a Saturn. So I was always a Sega person.
Hmm.
So I know there's titles out there that I would love to work on, but oh man, be put on the spot to think of them is a is a tough one.
Was you definitely just straight up a horror person? Was you like obviously talking about the Sega CD
Yeah.
outside of Sonic CD? What sort of titles did you play back in the day?
I love Lunar for the Sega CD,
Hmm.
so that started on the Sega CD, and then they had the PlayStation remakes. So, apart from horror titles, I love RPGs. I love, action games. Not too much on like FPSs or strategy games, but if a really great one comes out, I'll definitely check it out. But yeah, I think like RPGs and horror games are kind of where I gravitate to.
Hmm.
Oh, exceptional, exceptional. How did you get into kind of way forward then?
Yeah, so I've worked with WayForward for, I mean, since the beginning of my career, which was like 2009. So it's been a while now. And WayForward, their studio was actually just a few minutes away from where I went to college. So I think they would often come out and just like have WayForward staff come out and talk to students at our school. So in that way, I think I was just like at a job fair, one year, and WayForward reached out and said they liked my portfolio, and started working with them since, and haven't stopped working with them.
So you're a
So
way forward lifer then. That's a
it's been a
long time,
while, yeah,
especially in the games industry. The games industry is so competitive. So
yeah,
to have been retained for that long, they must be doing something right.
yeah. I mean, they've been around for a long time. They've been through so many generations of games, so I think they're really a company that's so well positioned to understand a game like this because they've been there,
Hmm.
for when those original titles were being created. So yeah, I've worked with them for a long time. Like I've had different studio jobs over the years. So WayForward has always been kind of like a freelance relationship for me, but I've always considered myself very close with them. Work with them almost like all the time. So WayForward has always been really, really wonderful to me.
Oh, that's good stuff.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. Where do you see yourself in 10 years in the games industry?
That's a good question. I mean, I would love to work on more projects like this. I do enjoy being kind of like in a leadership position, but what I really want to do is help bring up others, and get them to leadership positions to be able to create their own games. Like if I do kind of go more to a management kind of position, but if that gives me an opportunity to kind of help others bring their own ideas to life,
Hmm.
like that's something that I would love to see. So I definitely don't see myself like always doing all the art myself and stuff like that. I really believe in making room for others to share their art. So wherever that takes me, I think that's something that I would be excited to see.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant. Will, do you have
Yeah.
any? Do you have any last thoughts, comments, questions?
Yeah, I was going to ask, obviously, because you're in a quite high leadership position, but obviously with the Clock Tower remake, the remaster, sorry, coming. What's been the hardest part so far of developing the game so far?
Yeah, I honestly there's no like technical part of it,
Hmm.
because I think we have really, really amazing people working on each of their own disciplines. Honestly, I think it's the pressure,
Hmm.
of being able to put this together and deliver something that people are going to be excited about. With my area in particular, I'm kind of doing this animated intro. I've kind of concepted it, I storyboarded it, I've been animating it. At this point, I also have help animating it to kind of like go in and clean up my rough, sketchy animations. So I do have people who've been really amazing who are helping me. But I think kind of being in charge of that and just like I have to kind of go with my gut on what I think will make people excited and what excites me. But I do know that, again, there are purists out there that want the original and maybe aren't going to like kind of like an updated intro. But, I think it all comes from a place of completely loving this IP.
Yeah.
So I think just finding that balance of like, I adore this game. I want to kind of bring this little part of it to life in a specific way. Will this make people happy? I hope so, So I think kind of like coming to terms with that kind of pressure, given how dedicated this fan base is, I really want to do it justice.
Oh, no, definitely. And then I was going to also ask about, obviously, because there's so much media to do with Clock Tower and obviously all the old development stuff. Is there anything that you've been given or got hold of that's been lost, that's not been found, and you like bringing it back?
That's a good question. I think maybe not, just because people are so like the fans that are Clock Tower fans are really, really dedicated and they're really thorough.
Yeah.
So, I think when we dig into stuff, we are relying on the people who have found it before us. So I think we're not coming out with anything crazy that no one has ever seen before.
Yeah.
Except kind of like this new content that we're adding. But just really understanding and honestly respecting the people that kind of like kept this alive before us, that got it to this place where it's like, you've carried it this far. Obviously, there's a lot of dedication and interest. Let's take it this next step,
Oh, no, most definitely, yeah.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Again, really, is that all for you, Will? You all sorted?
Yeah, that's all. I'm all good, yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, super appreciate your time today, Mariel, giving us a very detailed insight into what's upcoming with Clock Towers. Do you have any closing thoughts for Horror Game Awards listeners?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just hoping that everyone is excited for it. I'm excited for new people to experience this game that, again, I've loved since I was 16. Just for people to play the original, kind of play this updated version, experience the kind of new content we're adding for it. Just trying to get it in the hands of as many people as possible so they can understand and appreciate this game as much as we do. That's all we really want.
And I'm sure in 2024, that's going to be achieved.
Yes, hoping.
Really appreciate your time today, Mariel. And thank you to everybody who's listened to this podcast today. I've been Andy. This has been Will. Thank you for listening to Talking Terror.
Yeah.
Catch up with
Thank you so much.
very soon. Thank you.
This has been Talking Terror, the official podcast of the Horror Game Awards. Thank you very much for listening. Check out the links in the description for more info on where to follow our guests in order to support them and keep up to date with their work. The Horror Game Awards will be airing live on YouTube on Saturday the 16th of December. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel to avoid missing out on what promises to be a very exciting night of awards and game reveals, as well as future episodes of this podcast and other content. Thanks again for joining us, and we hope to see you next time.